Ambassador Zethka had witnessed many species join the Galactic Council over his 3 centuries of service. The proud Valdorians with their crystal cities, the wise Etherians who spoke in harmonious frequencies, the industrious Korthak with their mechanical precision. But never had he encountered a species quite like the humans. They had arrived at the council chambers 15 cycles ago with their modest delegation, speaking softly of trade agreements and peaceful cooperation. Their representative, a female named Sarah Chen, possessed an almost unsettling calmness that reminded Zethka of the deep ocean currents of his homeworld, deceptively gentle on the surface, yet carrying tremendous power beneath. "We simply wish to establish fair trading routes through the Kepler corridor," Chen had explained during their first session, her voice steady despite the obvious condescension from the hegemony representatives. The hegemony, a coalition of the galaxy's most militaristic species, had controlled that corridor for over 2 millennia. They saw humans as nothing more than primitives who had barely crawled out of their single solar system. What could these newcomers possibly offer? "Absolutely not," had thundered General Vracath, his 4 arms gesticulating wildly. "The corridor belongs to established civilizations. You may purchase passage rights at standard rates, triple taxation for probationary species." Chen had simply nodded. "We understand your position. Perhaps we could discuss alternatives?" For 14 cycles, the humans had endured increasingly absurd demands. The hegemony raised passage fees by 400%. They imposed safety inspections that lasted months. They demanded cultural tribute, requiring human ships to display symbols of hegemony superiority. Each time, Chen and her team had responded with diplomatic requests for fairness, backed by carefully presented economic data showing mutual benefits. Zethka had watched other species break under far less pressure. The gentlefolk of Andorra had surrendered their territorial claims after a single harsh negotiation. The proud Stellan Empire had withdrawn from 3 systems when faced with similar economic warfare. But humans? They kept talking, kept negotiating, kept asking for reasonable accommodations with that same unsettling patience. The breaking point came during the 15th cycle. General Vracath had decided to demonstrate hegemony power by seizing a human medical transport carrying supplies to a plague-stricken colony in the Outer Rim. According to hegemony law, they had the right to inspect any vessel for potential contraband. Chen had sat in the emergency session with that same ocean-deep calm, even as reports came in that the medical supplies were being processed while colonists died. "General Vracath," she had said, her voice still soft, still diplomatic. "We have been patient. We have followed protocols. We have respected your authority. But you have now crossed a line that we simply cannot tolerate." The general had laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "And what will you primitives do about it? File another complaint? Request another committee review?" Chen had stood slowly, and for the first time in 15 cycles, Zethka had seen something shift in her demeanor. Her eyes, previously warm brown, had turned cold as the void between stars. "No," she had said quietly. "We're done being patient." The first sign that something had changed came 6 hours later, when every hegemony communication satellite in 3 sectors simply stopped working. Not destroyed. That would have been an act of war. They had simply been reprogrammed to broadcast human classical music on all frequencies. By the next day, hegemony ships began experiencing technical difficulties. Their navigation systems would randomly route them to human colonies, where they would be greeted by cheerful port authorities offering complimentary maintenance services that somehow took weeks to complete. Within a week, the entire hegemony supply chain had mysteriously reorganized itself. Critical shipments were delayed by Byzantine bureaucratic processes that humans had somehow legally implemented across 17 different star systems. Military vessels found themselves trapped in customs checkpoints, their crews buried under paperwork that was technically correct, but impossibly complex. "How are they doing this?" Vracath had demanded during an emergency session, his usual bluster replaced by barely controlled panic. Chen had smiled, the first time Zethka had seen her do so. It was not a warm expression. "General, humans have a saying. We didn't claw our way to the top of the food chain on our homeworld by being the strongest or the fastest. We did it by being the most persistent, the most adaptable, and the most creative problem solvers in existence." She had gestured to a holographic display showing the cascade of systemic failures plaguing hegemony operations. You wanted to see what happens when humans lose their patience? This is us being impatient. We've spent 15 cycles learning every law, every regulation, every loophole in your systems. We've mapped every dependency in your supply chains, every vulnerability in your networks, every pressure point in your society. The display had shifted, showing projected economic collapse scenarios. We could have ended this on day one, but we chose to be civilized. We chose to negotiate. We chose to be patient. But patience, General, is not the same thing as weakness. It's simply delayed action. Chen had leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to release our medical transport immediately. You're going to open the Kepler corridor to fair passage for all species. And you're going to remember that humans don't just win through force. We win by understanding systems better than those who built them. The medical transport had been released within the hour. The corridor had been opened by the end of the week. And Zethka had learned something that would stay with him for the rest of his long life. There was nothing more dangerous in the galaxy than a patient species that finally decided it was done waiting. The humans had never raised their voices, never fired a shot, never broken a single law. They had simply stopped being patient, and the galaxy had bent to accommodate them.